Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to make another from a beginner video, and that's the 5 rules of coding, because the start of my coding journey began when I was a welder, and I was also doing a lot of contact sports, specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the side, and my back ended up giving out because my body couldn't handle a lot of the stress. Even the physical therapist said at your age it wasn't right for you to do that. But overall, in the job situation, everything I was in, I just kind of realized I wasn't happy, and if I was going to be down for a little bit, I might as well do something with that time. So there was a month-long period where I couldn't even walk. The pain on my sciatic nerve was so bad. So I learned how to code. I'd always been into learning the syntax of Python, and then I really just had that moment where I purchased Codecademy to start learning about coding. And then I'm going to get into the 5 rules from a beginner that I have learned from 6 total months of learning to code and overall just learning about computers. This has opened up a lot of doors for me, learning-wise, career-wise, potentially. But this is just to chronicle my journey, and if you are above me in the coding realm, or if you're one of these big YouTubers who wants to give me feedback in the comments to see if I am on the right path, because trust me, I'm always looking for people to take advice from still. I'm not a master at this, but I am a lot better than I was when I first wrote my first line of code. So let's get into it. All right, rule number 1 of learning how to code is focusing on syntax last. Now, this is something when I first started, I was obsessed with memorizing syntax. But loops, arrays, when you learn a lot of these languages, you realize that a lot of these concepts are very similar, and the syntax of how to get it done is very similar, and you learn what to tweak and what not to. I have a notebook that's basically a cheat sheet that has all the syntax in there, and that just leaves a lot less pressure on myself so I have more headspace to be creative and really put the programs that I'm building together. And I know that sounds very backwards. I know that learning how to code, part of the thing is like coding, but that's just what I learned. It's a lot of the things that I was focusing on is, okay, how does the computer actually work? How does it actually pull data from the server and give it to the client? How is the client going to interact on the front end with the DOM? And how am I going to make these buttons accessible? And how do I make them work and actually access the back end from the front end? So learning the client side, the server side, and also data structures, learning how to be a data analyst, learning about cybersecurity really came to mind, and that's where a lot of my focus was, because once I wrote down all of that syntax, I really didn't need to learn all the syntax and keep it memorized, because it's actually pretty easy to memorize these concepts. But once you have that cheat sheet down, being creative is so much more easy, because you're not worried about if you're going to forget that syntax. But that brings into rule number 2. And rule number 2 is actually learning, actually coding. Not just learning, not just doing tutorials. They say if you snooze, you lose. Just doing tutorials is sleepwalking, and not just coding, but anything in life, the best way you're going to get better at it is if you actually try and fail and get better at it. And do it hands-on, because that is the best training for anything. I know that there is a book, but you'll also learn when you get out into the workforce of anything. Because I've been in a lot of different fields, and when I'm going into coding, I'm actually expecting the exact same kind of things. There are tricks that people know that they've learned hands-on, and I'm going to have to learn that. But yes, actually coding, making websites, whether they're static, whether they're dynamic, actually building backends with PHP, which I highly recommend. Actually doing these things is how you're going to get better and create a firm understanding of what you're doing with computer and what you're doing with the code. Rule number 3 is to be creative. And I'm not saying completely right syntax, completely wrong, and call it being creative. There's a very logical point to coding, because that's what a computer runs on, is basic logic. It's going to take everything you say very, very literal, and that's how a computer basically works. But how you're going to get the computer to interpret that logic is where the creativity comes in. So always being creative, always making sure that your parts run faster, always pulling from the back end faster, and being creative once you learn how that stuff happens. That's one of those things that is really good for your portfolio. And when you go into a coding interview, they are going to most likely enjoy that, and you're going to stand out a lot more. So be creative. All right, now rule number 4, and this is very important. I cannot stress this enough, is to be patient with yourself. Never be too hard on yourself on anything, especially coding, because you are going to get syntax errors. You're going to get those red errors in your terminal all the time. The best way to deal with that is to be willing to get your first error, and then you only gets better from there. I promise you that. Don't be hard on yourself. Be patient. This is a journey, a lifelong commitment, just like anything else. Nothing good happens overnight. We live in a world of instant gratification where everything is so instantaneous that people don't really understand what it's like to be a long hauler or anything like that. And anything that really is worth doing, you have to put a lot of time into it, and you have to be willing to fail, get better, fail, get better. Rule number 5 is to be open-minded and have realistic expectations. You get sold on this pipe dream that I will admit is very overhyped, where some people get to work wherever they want, whenever they want, and make a ton of money from the Bahamas. And that's where the have realistic expectations comes into play, because that's not everybody. If you could possibly get there, but those are top-notch dudes. Not everybody's going to be like the founders of Facebook or the founders of Instagram. Not everyone does that. And you got to be comfortable with where you're at, what money you're making, and be humble about the whole situation. Just like anything else, because there's always going to be someone who is better than you, and that's just the way it is. But that also comes into the be open-minded part. You never stop learning on this journey. There are always going to be things that you are going to learn about, and it's a dopamine hit that is addicting once you finally figure something out and something clicks, because you're like, the possibilities to how I can apply this to my projects and my programmings is absolutely endless. And there's really all I could say about that is that, being open-minded and being willing to learn and not being salty about the journey, picking yourself up when you fall, making sure that you're not being too hard on yourself, and finding the right teachers is going to help you so much on this journey. And that's just from my 6 months, and I can't wait to see where I'm at in a couple years, just to see just how much I've evolved from here on there. I don't know if that makes sense, but at the same time, I personally right now am excited to continue down this journey, and I think anybody who is starting should be too. Be excited to be a beginner. Being a beginner is probably one of the best things ever, because you have a lot of room to look stupid and a lot of room to grow, and the pressure is a lot less. And take advantage of this beginning period, guys. That's all I have to say. Those are my 5 rules of learning how to code from a beginner. I will see you on the next one. Thank you guys very much for watching this video. And if you like this beat that I made behind, I'll leave a link down to it below, because I also do like making tunes and everything like that. I also try and produce those to make money too. So if you guys ever want to help me out there and buy something, you could find me on an email or message me on one of my YouTube accounts, and we will definitely get that ball rolling. Thank you guys very much for everything you do, and I will see you next time.